Let's just dig a bit deeper then, because we think about this a lot in our business, and how to spot bullshit effectively, right? From current management, but also former executives. And so, how do you, when you're receiving information from current management or former, how do you handicap that information?
What's available today is there's a lot of KPIs out there where you can test some of the facts that they're actually giving you. And if you understand the industry enough, you can see what they're doing. Another thing that's really more of a bugaboo me than anything else is that, so if you take a look at, let's just take an industry like BDCs. BDCs, probably the most important metric of BDCs is return on equity, or how much return are you going to get for these equities. You look at every management presentation except for one, they don't even talk about it. But the one guy that talks about it goes through and deconstructs it, and so you can understand what the business is. Those are the types of examples, I think, where you've got a bunch of people that, like you're saying, how much is the B? I'm sure the management knows what they're doing. It's just that they haven't spent enough time to communicate what's important and how to do it. And I think if you look at some industries, that's a very important thing to really sort of, surprisingly enough, it's a very rare skill in terms of some of these businesses. Do
you subscribe to In Practice or Tegas or any of the other services?
It's a good question.
And how do you utilize them?
No. In Practice, I do subscribe to a number of the resources, and I think they're very good for you to get up to speed on an industry. They provide almost another level of what, you can read the filings, you can try to understand the business, but it's actually providing insight into how businesses are run. And it's a totally different, as an outsider, there's a lot of stuff you don't see that happens on the inside of the business. And it's provided, what these third-party services do is they provide those specific insights. Now, the thing that I really appreciate about In Practice is they focus on certain types of business models. You can do different things. You can do more of a general focus, which is more of like what I think a lot of the other larger providers do. But what I appreciate about In Practice is they focus on a specific business model. And so I think there's different groups that do that. But for me, it really provides some additional insights into what's really going on in the business beyond what you can find in the public filings and all those types of things.
But wait, I have a better question. What do you think are the disadvantages of using primary research providers or speaking to executives? Steve,
one thing that comes to mind for me on that point is how do you build the commitment as a portfolio manager for the position? Because your analysis might be spot on, the research that can be provided to you might be great, but if you're not able to over time build the necessary commitment to continue to hold a stock when it might go down 50% because of something, some sort of misunderstanding, right? So when do you kind of question or re-question your thesis? And I think it's kind of like a subconscious thing. And I think the more work you put in yourself, some element of putting in the work is actually just to also create that commitment in order to buy and hold.
Well, and I think part of the thing, too, is what I've typically done is try to devise KPIs, very specific quantitative things I can see, and to show me whether the business is getting better or worse. And if you can look at those quantitative KPIs and just sort of say, okay, this business is moving in the right direction or not. Examples of that could be like, okay, if you're in a consolidating business and the margins aren't going up and the turns aren't going up, there's something wrong there. That's the way the business model works. And if there's something wrong, then you need to understand it. But I think for me, specifically looking at KPIs helps out a lot in trying to develop those. And what the KPIs are basically the key management metrics that the whole team is working towards to make the business better.
What I'm hearing is there's no disadvantages.
What's that?
What are the disadvantages?
Of using, well, I mean, I guess the disadvantage could be is if you just use them in isolation to buy and sell stocks and not try to get other confirming and disconfirming information and drive it from that perspective. You need to really do, as Steve had said, you need to do your own research and bring it, what you're going to bring to the table or other models, maybe contrary opinions. Because I've seen in different, when you look at some of this research, they a lot of times you'll get interviews from competitors, and they'll have different views on things, and you need to really understand. Okay, well, this is this views, but I think what I try to tie a lot of stuff back to are quantitative KPIs, which at least to me is providing giving me the feedback that the business is moving in the right direction, not the wrong one.
Yeah, and I think the ownership of that position is an important concept because a number of years ago when Manish Pabrai talked about the cloning concept, people, I think, wrongly assumed it's, oh, hey, Buffett owns this stock, so then it's a safe stock to own, or Manish owns it, or someone else does, a famous investor. And I think there'd be a lot of kind of lemmings following along just with that. And then, if it didn't work out, now it's not your fault because, it was someone else's, Manish owned it. And so I just, outsourced my research to him basically. And I think you have to be really careful about that because the concept of cloning should be an idea generation concept. And yeah, obviously you have some trust, in some investors that you respect. And you can defer a little bit to some of their judgment on it, but just a little bit. Because ultimately you have to do enough research and you have to get comfortable enough with the position to make sure that it, in some ways make sure it's your idea. Like I've had positions through the years where I actually don't remember exactly where I discovered them, and then later on found out, I had a friend say, oh, remember that, when we talked about that company, and, I thought I found it because through the research process, I convinced myself I found it, which gave me the commitment level to hold it, for a long duration. I think that concept is very important.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the risks of research, and I think one of the big things that we've found in primary research, which is interviewing typically former executives of either a target company or customers, competitor suppliers, one of the biggest risks is pretty much just jumping straight to doing the primary research without actually doing your own research independently. I think one thing we've found with the, partly maybe our problem is that where these services are now so much available, where people, find it easy to just jump on a call with an executive straight away without doing their own research and can kind of be subject to
and now they're telling
bias.
you the story before you know the numbers behind the story.
Yeah.
And so it's, that can be dangerous.
You can't handicap that bias because they have their own biases, they've left the company or X, Y, Z. So